I wanted to give an overview of the actual tools that I used, because one of the first questions I get talking about this project was, so what did you use to get it done? It's actually a lot less than I would have thought to get the project going, but on this table here I've got all of the tools that I couldn't have really done without, with the exception of the table saw, which is outside. So I'll put a picture of that in there. So table saw was critically important for cutting wood. I also used a little handheld saw. All mine are replaceable battery handhelds and they were absolutely fine. Cedar and redwood are pretty soft and nice to work with. I cut most of my lengths of timber either with a hand saw or this coping saw, which is really great for detailed fine cuts, especially on the cuts where the planks need to touch together. It's a bit more control. I did do some with this saw when I was a bit more confident, long cuts. Generally speaking, I would cut in a piece of wood and then like this, maybe use this saw to cut that through, and then I would hand finish with a hand planer. Anyway, I use this big measuring square quite a lot, especially early on to set the table and the frame, and then later on to square, make sure the rear of the boat was square and the sides and measurements and so forth. Basic safety equipment, breathing mask. I also used the disposable ones, but being disposable, I threw them away. Goggles, of course. The other thing that you're really going to need lots of is clamps. Now, depending on what glue you're using, you either need a clamp that will add pressure, but different sizes of these are pretty widely available, different sizes of clamps. I bought these plastic sets. I had these. Someone gave these to me like literally 15 years ago. They still work. And I bought about 6 bigger clamps, 2 medium, 2 small, and 2 really humongous ones. When it really got to the widest part of the board, I needed something a bit bigger. One thing I really enjoyed using was my grandpa's measuring sets, sort of square, woodwork square, although I used the newer one if I needed to actually measure. So putting the board together, gluing and clamping, really I did most of the work with these 2 hand tools when the planks were done. So to trim and cut long strips, I used the table saw. So really up to this point, the only other tool I used regularly was the chisel. This was my mum's chisel, and this is a little chisel end my grandfather had. So it was kind of fun using those. That was from mum as well. Trimming little pieces of wood, that knife was important, and shaping them to fit on the board. Just trimming edges. I really use this small micro hand planer more than anything else. I use this planer at the end really to flatten the deck, and on the bottom to flatten that right at the end. You'll need a planer, and this I used extensively to shape the edges, to fit the edges of the board together. So planers, critically important. Chisels, you don't need one. I liked using the chisel to trim. You could use a knife, but the chisel's fit for purpose. These sort of short form style graters. This one was okay. This one was okay for the nose, microplaner, and got to get things when they fall in. One thing that was great was this Barco little tri-edge scraper, especially once you've fiberglassed. I dropped it and smashed the one tip off, but you still got one good edge. Scraping the epoxy off, little drips and so forth, invaluable. So definitely get one of those or get a blade to scrape. Measuring tape, I've got a couple of those. One of them died along the way, so definitely very useful. I think I've got a third one sitting around somewhere as well. So measuring tape you'll need. Sanding blocks, pretty obvious for sanding. Some of the sanding sheets I have did not fit on a planer. My hand sander. Bought this one, it was pretty cheap, it was $6 or something for nice linear sanding. And of course I made my own sanding block. I really enjoyed using this, but for just general rubbing down, it was good to have something a bit more versatile, whereas this is really suited for along the grain sanding. So sanding blocks, I thought they were really useful. Having said that, I did a lot of sanding with my orbital sander. So this is a random orbital sander, really useful. I did find it spun up really aggressively when held away from the wood, and all of a sudden you dig in, which wasn't cool. I used the mouse sander as well. That was really useful for some of the detail sanding. But sanding, you're going to do a lot of sanding. I think I'll do a whole other video on types of sandpaper because I think I tried them all. So then we're down to sort of finishing. I bought this pad. Jess, my awesome neighbor, had this really old Craftsman buffing made for buffing and polishing. So that was awesome. That was really quick on the board. I didn't quite believe simple polish would work at the end. Polish is a little bit abrasive, of course, so I made my own polishing thing here. I did a test patch and went, oh wow, it's gonna work. Anyway, I did it. That's what I used. So for gluing along the way, I had lots of little acetate brushes. You can just chuck them away. I think they're 5 cents each or something. Mixing sticks for epoxy, all the epoxy measuring jugs and all that sort of stuff. If you need to do a little epoxy dipping job, or it does set hard, or do a patch or something, which you may need to fill in a little fisheye, whatever it is, little cups. And I think that was one of the kids' ice cream cups we saved, but little cups, medium-sized cups, and party cups, all really useful. Squeegees, of course, for fiberglassing were really good. Rubber gloves were great, although I did find these a little bit more convenient, just once-off blue gloves to use. Made my own cork stopper for epoxying, and a zillion different types of tape. So cutting fiberglass, cutting tape, whatever else, scissors, fabric scissors, you need a big set. And for drilling in, I got this Forstner drill bit set. I borrowed this from my awesome neighbor Jess across the road, who was happy to lend it to me. I only needed it for a few holes, but it does the job better than anything else. So this is different than hole saws. These drill in flat with no guide, protruding drill bit there, which is different than a hole saw. But a Forstner drill bit set is really great for leash plugs and vents and so forth. So I'll give that and that back to Jess, but I wanted to show you first. Missed out the hammer, a few different types of hammers, knocking in bits of wood, making sure they're tight. You'll need one of those. And down on the floor here, of course, is the shop vac. This one's really good. It's small. You got to suck up the bits of wood, but also if you put it on here, it blows as well. So you want to blow away dust. It's a vacuum cleaner I used almost every time I did some woodwork and tried to blow the dust away on a regular basis. So that's it on the table, from cutting, clamping, edging, shaping, sanding, gluing, and finishing. It's all here. Most of the stuff you will have amassed over time, or you might need to get some clamps, but these are the tools I actually used. Pretty common, nothing that special, and pretty easy to use and get familiar with.